Hi, I'm Christopher Kennedy in Palm Springs, and you're listening to US Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to US Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Gild, and if you're wondering why I'm sporting water wings today, it's because we're headed back to the pool in Palm Springs. Yep, we're at the swanky US Modernist compound for Modernism Week 2025, and this week we're hanging poolside with the Daughters of Design, Susan Saarinen, Celia Bertoia, and Carla Hartman. After we dry off, we head back to the studio where we've got authors Phillip Cox and Niall Cronin talking about architect Evans Woollen. Finally, from NPR to a Pink Martini concert tour, it's very special musical guest Ari Shapiro. And now your host, who has never toured with Pink Martini, Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Thank you, sir. That's true. I've never toured with Pink Martini. But since I don't sing anything except our theme song, that pretty much lines up. What becomes a legend most? That was the tagline to a decades-long promotion by the American Legend Cooperative, an agricultural marketing co-op of mink fur farmers, best known for its Black Glamma line of furs. Starting in 1941, mink breeders in the Great Lakes region bred a black-furred mink and trademarked it as Black Glamma. Their advertising campaign, What Becomes a Legend Most, started in 1968 and featured well-known celebrities glamorously modeling these furs. Lauren Bacall, Judy Garland, Liza Minnelli, Barbara Streisand, Brigitte Bardot, Leontine Price, Cher, Carol Burnett, Raquel Welch, Anne Margaret, and Catherine Deneuve, among many others. I'm surprised that Linda Carter never made on this list, but that's just me. And there were men, too. Ray Charles, Luciano Pavarotti, Rudolf Nureyev, and Tommy Tune. The campaign was enormously successful, with ads appearing in nearly every major newspaper and magazine. Fur sales boomed until they didn't. By the late 1990s, there was widespread rebellion against people wearing fur, even to the point of physical assaults on fur wearers. So the coats went into the closet, but slowly they're coming back out. Head to the Symphony or an uptown club in the winter, and Black Glamma is back, baby. If you rub up against one, you'll know what I'm talking about. Pretty sweet. So is the case with concrete modernist architecture. Starting in the 50s, for decades, these concrete structures were the celebrities of the architecture world. Banks and universities couldn't build them fast enough. They symbolize an optimistic future, the kind we had been promised, with ray guns and two-way wrist radios and flying cars. All Jetsons all the time. The future was going to be very, very bright, and these buildings reflected futuristic designs that still hold up today. Unfortunately, like those furs, these buildings fell out of favor, and by 1980, hardly any were built. And they had problems, too, especially with heating and air conditioning, which in many buildings was a nightmare to regulate. So creation of new ones went into the closet, so to speak, like those furs. But slowly, they're coming back out. The next 10 years promises to have stunning new architecture all over the world. Lord Norman Foster, who is 90, is still turning them out. Jeannie Gang is 61 and has achieved not only fame for buildings, but also is one of the few large design firms to close the pay gap between men and women. Bjarke Ingels is only 50, so we've got decades more amazement to come there. What becomes a legend most? Perhaps we'll see some famous architects in fur. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs.
Returning podcast guests Susan Saarinen, Celia Bertoia, and Carla Hartman tour the country giving talks as the Daughters of Design. Susan Saarinen, daughter of architect Eero Saarinen and sculptor Lillian Swan, grew up on the grounds of the Cranbrook Institute in Michigan, where her grandfather Iljo Saarinen was director. Though she once resisted the family legacy, she ultimately found her path in landscape architecture. Celia Bertoia, daughter of sculptor Harry Bertoia, leads the Harry Bertoia Foundation. Carla Hartman, granddaughter of Charles and Ray Eames, grew up in one of the most iconic design studios of the 20th century. She's expanded that legacy, championing hands-on inclusive design education through years of work at the Denver Art Museum and the Eames office. For Modernism Week 2025, here's our poolside conversation with Susan, Cecilia, and Carla.
We're recording poolside from the Hotel Skylark, where at 6 o'clock tonight, the Daughters of Design are going to take the stage at the Annenberg. Now, this may sound like a rock and roll group, and it kind of is. But these three women are the daughters of famous architects and designers. They're back here for, what is this, the fourth or fifth visit?
Time here.
Third time here. So this is like a festival now with recurring acts, right? Right?
May it keep getting better.
Yes, exactly. Tell me about, when did you all three start doing presentations together?
It was in Boulder, Colorado.
Yes.
At the Design Within Reach store there. I had never given a public talk, but it was pretty fun. And I don't know, we all did our thing and chatted afterwards. It was good.
Up until that point, we had not met.
Okay.
We knew about each other, but we had not met. And now we're pretty good buddies.
Yeah.
Now we went out to dinner even, all three of us last night. So yeah, it was fun.
Had you not met in childhood at all?
No.
Yeah,
So that was about 10 years ago, I think. Something like that.
Yeah.
And after Boulder, what happened? When did it come together again? Because you've done it several times.
The Modernism show in Denver. We gave another talk,
Okay.
and that was maybe 3, 4, 5 years after.
And then Modernism Week picked you up.
Yeah, and they won't let us go.
It's like getting your own producer, right?
It's great.
When you're up on the stage, what do people ask you about the most?
You know, what's really interesting is generally we just give lectures, show our slides. People are intrigued with seeing all the slides. So there's sometimes a question and answer at the end, but it's not very long. They're really here to hear about our memories.
Yeah. Celia, tell me about your father.
Well, I could talk for hours or days, but basically Harry Bertoia was a creative genius who worked with both of the other designers here. And he did everything from beautiful, tiny jewelry, handmade, to, of course, the iconic furniture that we all know, to monumental commissioned sculpture for architectural projects. And he was a very powerful man, even though he was not that large physically. He was about my size, 5, 7, or 8, but so strong physically and mentally, and he just exuded this force. So that's a little synopsis of Harry.
Okay. And he was known for the Bertoia chair, right?
Yes, that's what most people associate the Bertoia name with,
Yes.
is the wire grid chairs, the diamond chair, the bird chair, the side chair. They came out in 1952.
Really? Was it that long ago? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and they have been in continuous production since that time, which is almost unheard of. Furniture is like fashion, it's in one year, out the next. But I think all of our relatives, the designs have been in continuous production. They're just iconic classics that go with any style house.
Yes. Even a little Cape Cod can use a Bertoia chair.
Absolutely.
Carla, you're the granddaughter of Charles and Ray Eames. Mm-hmm. And there are, 4 other grandchildren
Yes.
involved in that?
Yes.
And that's a company that's still going quite strong. The designs are as popular as ever.
They truly are, and I think that we're actually involving the 4th generation now. Just 2 members have joined, and we are really about preserving, communicating, and extending the legacy. So we have been incredibly active recently with extending the legacy to a new generation to hopefully bring them into the fold. So as a result, you'll see Reebok shoes, for instance, about 6 different issues, Globe skateboards, multiple decks, and it may seem odd, but it's another way to sort of grow the fold, so to speak.
And I remember from childhood that it seemed like the film they would trot us into the AV room the most often to see was The Power of 10.
Powers of 10 is really an amazing concept. I met a professor at RISD, and he had seen Powers of 10, and he claimed to have seen it every day throughout his college years. And what I cannot believe is here he teaches design, and he hadn't realized that it was the same Eames that had made the chairs.
Oh.
And so, they are very diverse in terms of films, as you just mentioned, and furniture, exhibitions, architecture, toys, and really I think one of the testaments to them is it's their ideas that are the legacy, and so it's tapping into that, and I'll be talking about that tonight.
Oh, wonderful.
Things I learned as a grandchild from them.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's great that you've got the next generation on board.
It's fabulous. I mean, some people might say, oh my goodness, that's a heavy burden. But if they come willingly, as the 5 of us, we never, ever thought we'd be working at the Eames office. So we all created our own careers. And fortunately, they were all so diverse that as a synergy, it's fabulous. So I was an educator at the Denver Art Museum. Was my thing, which shows the impact of Charles and Ray on me, because chairs are my passion, and I teach making miniature chairs to architects, designers, down to 3rd graders. So,
Oh, that's wonderful. Mm-hmm. Now, Susan, in your family, you had chairs too.
Well, my grandfather, who was born in Finland in 1873, lived at a time when architects designed everything, all of the furniture that went into houses. And my father's generation came along, and it wasn't about handmade chairs, it was about mass production. Mm-hmm. So a whole different look and a whole different approach. And at the same time, all of the buildings were becoming more modern. So we can't have the same old chair. We need to come up with something modern looking. So
That matches the aesthetic.
yes, exactly. So mass production and aesthetic changes caused a whole different approach, which Harry and Charlie were both working on at the same time. And in fact, Charlie, who was my godfather, so I call him Charlie. Charlie and Arrow competed in the MoMA competition in 1939-40 for organic furniture and won 2 first prizes for chairs that are still being made in Europe today.
One of the times that I saw you and your late brother was at the opening of the TWA Hotel.
Right.
In New York, which used to be the terminal for TWA and is now attached by a jet bridge over to the JetBlue terminal. That is really an astonishing restoration. I think it's really one of the best ones I've ever seen of a building. They really brought it back.
What was amazing about that was here's this tiny little terminal right in the middle of a busy airport.
At JFK, yeah.
Too small to use as a terminal anymore, completely out of date. And Tyler Morse and crew imagined what they could do with this little building and created a convention center on Long Island so that businesses on Long Island didn't have to go to Manhattan to have these conventions anymore. And that made business sense. And then what they did was to create the most amazing convention center underground. The tarmac.
Yeah. People just don't realize that that's down there.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's huge.
And can you stay there?
Yes.
Absolutely.
You can stay in the hotel. Have you been there yet?
Not yet.
You really
I'm
should
dying to
stop,
go.
when you're flying through New York and spend the night. It's an
Very
incredible
cool.
experience.
I was totally entranced with it. I mean, the whole bringing back those departure sign with the rolling wheels, and you hear the clickety-clack as it changes, arrival, departure, etc. And it was like, wow, that takes me back to when I was a small kid.
So how did growing up in these households affect your choices of career?
Well, for me, I was kind of a rebel, and I just went in totally other directions. Really didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. But through various careers in real estate and nonprofits and race timing, somehow I came back to the art and design world because I wanted to. I had learned so many skills and life lessons in the other areas that when I started to become older and thinking about what do I want to do before I leave the planet, the most important thing was to further the legacy of Harry Bertoia, my father. And at that point, I started the foundation. I had really no idea what that entailed. I was in my 50s when I came back to the fold, so to speak. And I am so glad that I did. My work is so meaningful to me. It's a labor of love. I'm never going to get rich doing it, but it's so satisfying, and I meet such amazing people doing it. I just love it, and I'm very happy the way things turned out.
Oh, that's so cool. Carla, how about you? How did it affect your career choices?
Well, I was also a very late bloomer. I had divorced parents who were polar opposites, and everyone said temperamentally that I was aligned with my father, who was business. So it took a long time of going through 5 years of college and becoming a psychology major, and then switching at the very last moment. Art therapy did its magic. And suddenly I realized, wow, this isn't a coincidence. All my friends are fine arts students. And I finally said to my husband, would you mind if I become a double major? And he fortunately supported that for art history, and then I went right into my master's for museum studies. And it was just a natural segue into architecture, design, and graphics, the department at the Denver Art Museum. And I was a curatorial assistant. I organized the curator's library books, which to me was heaven. And then
you have the soul of an archivist.
Yeah, well, and ironically, I have for the last 3 years been archiving my mother's work, Lucia Eames's, which is extensive. And Crate and Barrel has now produced the third collection of her work, and we have other offerings in the future. So I dip back and forth between my mother and my grandparents. And I'll just tell one story. I was working in my 20s at an accounting firm, and I went down to attend a birthday party for Charles. And after that night of being down there, I thought, what the heck am I doing in an accounting firm? I went up and I quit because they were that transformative. It was that much of a soul hit that I needed to be doing something creative. So I feel very blessed to have been given the opportunity to be education director for 20 years. Prior to that, I was at the Denver Art Museum. So it's fulfilling, and I'll be doing it hopefully till the evening before I die.
Until you leave the planet with her. Now, Susan, you became an architect.
When I was 12, my father said, don't become an architect just because your parents are doing that or an artist.
Yeah.
The first degree I got was in ceramics and weaving. So my mother and my grandmother. Second one was I needed a saleable skills, so I became a nurse.
Oh, okay.
And the third one was following a revelation that somebody at Brandeis suggested that I could become an architect. And I said, no. Had several tests. And they said, yes, you really could be. But what about landscape architecture? Because I liked the nature outside and the materials outside. I didn't like glass and steel and concrete. 2 weeks after that suggestion, I woke up in the middle of the night, sat straight up in bed and said, that's me. So then finally I could make peace with the word architecture.
Yes.
And I've been practicing for 40 years plus.
Well, that's wonderful. Now, all of you, I assume, with these estates and these licensing deals that you have to manage all the time, are working with companies who are selling the furniture and selling all kinds of different things under the different name brands. Have you all ever had anything like really unusual? Like, has somebody come and wanted to put Eames on a bucket of chicken? What kind of pitches do you get?
Fortunately, I'm not the person they go to. They go to my brother Eames, who's the director of the Eames office, or my brother Byron, who is sort of the financial umbrella guy. And so I don't hear the pitches until they've sort of been streamlined.
Vetted out a little bit?
Pre-screened.
Pre-screened, yeah. So I'm sure there's something wacky and wild. I mean, some people might think skateboards is wild, but the scary thing about my loft is that each production we fervently love, and that's the point, is to create something that is really authentic and true to the Eames aesthetic. And so I have skateboard decks hanging everywhere, mobiles, and I can't tell you how many Reebok shoes, let alone each elephant that comes along with a different finish. So my house is, people always come in and say, wow, this is like a museum.
I remember from about 12 years ago that Ice Cube did a video on the Eames where he was driving around.
Yes, can you believe it? He had architecture knowledge. He had been, and so he was. I love that juxtaposition of an unexpected and someone who is a true loyalist talking with great fervent love about the Eameses as a totally unexpected spokesperson.
Celia, have you had any unexpected super fans of your father's work?
Yes, all kinds of people. And when I was a teenager, of course, I loved rock and roll. And the Steve Miller Band was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Living in the USA.
CDs available in the lobby.
His wife called me not too long ago and said, my husband, who happens to be Steve Miller of the Steve Miller Band, loves Bertoia tonal sculptures. And do you know of any for sale? And we had a lovely chat. So that was unexpected. Obviously, he had the musical background, and he was very intrigued by the sun ambient sounds.
Oh,
it was cool.
Sure. That's a great fan to have. Susan, what about you? Have you had any unexpected Saarinen fans pop up?
Most of the interest comes from people who are writing books or making movies.
Okay.
So I would not say unexpected, save one. One of the chairs, the grasshopper chair, was originally made with parachute webbing, and somebody who had an original chair sent me some pictures of a restored grasshopper chair.
Okay.
But most of it's been educational, which I think is absolutely essential, because if you know something about a subject, you appreciate it more. If people don't know who Harry Bertoia is, or Charles and Ray Eames, or Eero Saarinen, they don't understand that there's a building or a chair that's been related, just as Celia was talking about.
On a show that actually came out today, we talked with a fellow who found a very rare Finn Yule. Was that a painting, Tom? Yep. And kind of a unicorn that no one expected to find. So I was wondering, within all the different kinds of products that your fathers and grandfathers put out, is there any kind of unicorn that people are searching for that they want to find that's very rare?
Well, my father, he was an artist first, but he was also an engineer and a logistical expert and kind of a jack of all trades. And we had a little cement pool, fountain, if you will, and the drain would get clogged up with leaves and whatnot. So he made, I guess you would call it a drain filter. It was a round ball with holes so the water could get through, with a tube that went down to the drain. Very practical. It worked well. Now, I think it's still in the fountain, so no one's going to find it. But there were many things like that. He made a Christmas tree stand. That's still in the family, too, so sorry, you pickers, you're not going to find that either.
We won't tell you where she lives.
Jewelry is the one thing that seems to pop up in surprising places the most. He made handcrafted, often silver jewelry, and people come out of the woodwork with, "Oh, I found a brooch. Is it a Bertoia?" Mm-hmm. And sometimes it is.
Oh, cool. Any things come to mind for the two of you?
I think that there's a joy in having grandparents that have had so many different types of projects that invariably there's always something that is discovered. And for me, I've curated 4 exhibitions on Ray. And when I found this treasure trove, I had been totally unaware of the fact. I knew that she and Charles were friends with Billy Wilder, film maker, and Charles had actually gone and worked with Billy on one film. But to see Ray worked on the credits for Love in the Afternoon. And to see, which is a film that you can still see, but how she wove her bows, hearts, birds into the credits it was magical. And seeing probably about, 200 to 300 sketches and working with the calligraphy and the letters and juxtaposing it and layering it was just a magical experience for me. No one can buy them because they're all in the archive,
right.
but it's those hits that one isn't aware of a project and suddenly it's revealed, and it really touches the heart.
I think that there should be a movie about the two of them. Have there ever been a film about them, like a biographical film where people played them? Because I know Catherine O'Hara looks a lot like Ray.
Oh, that would be so interesting. There was a film, The Architect and the Painter, that was
the
made,
documentary.
And that was a documentary that the family hasn't done. I wish my brother Eames, who is a filmmaker, would do that. But he has given huge chunks of his body and mind to them by writing the Eames Primer. And he travels around the world lecturing about them. So I think it's a little beyond to hope for a film, but you never know.
Susan, how about you? Are there any kind of unicorn items from your father or grandfather that people are searching for?
I'm not sure that anybody's searching. They're out there. They're out there, but I'm not sure anybody's searching for them. They're certainly not getting in touch with Saarinen Family Designs to find them. I have a whole collection of my mother's sculptures, which I would like to find homes for. The Cranbrook has a collection of her work, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
My brother did a film on our father,
Yes. Great film.
Saarinen, the architect who saw the future. And before he passed on December 21st of last year, he was working on a film on Eliel, our grandfather. And we're hoping that we can take his research and script and turn it into the film that he had a dream about.
Well, please keep us posted on that. I really enjoyed talking with your brother about that first film.
Will do.
We recently finished a documentary about Harry Bertoia. It's called Harry Bertoia, Master of Metal. And at this point, it's available through the Harry Bertoia Foundation. We've had showings at various film festivals. It'll be in the Philadelphia Museum. But if anyone wants to have a viewing, they should contact us. Eventually, it will be available on public streaming somewhere.
Okay, that's good to know.
When Ray died, or actually before Ray died, she asked my mother to save the Eames house. The 901, it was too large a project to retrofit it for earthquake, sort of whatever. So the family has been saving the Eames house, and finally Mom put it into a foundation. And we are heartbroken by all of the news, all of the photographs and tales that we have heard about the Palisade fire. And we are so grateful, after many nights of prayer, that the Eames house still stands today. And it will be available for tours eventually. We do interior and exterior tours, but there is a lot of cleanup of ash, a lot of work
Smoke,
to do.
Yeah, a lot of rehabilitation.
Yeah, and so I hope your viewers, our listeners will check it out and go visit it, because we view it as the touchstone of Eames design for really understanding their work.
Well, thank you. Thank the three of you so much for coming by and visiting again. The Daughters of Design are available for your weddings, bar mitzvahs, and other anniversary parties. You can just book them to come, and maybe they'll bring their own chairs and sit on your stage and talk about things. Thanks again so much for talking with us.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Like most architects, Evans Woollen never reached the pantheon of Mies or Corbusier, but in Indianapolis he was a superstar. The new book, What a Building Does, highlights Evans' brutalist buildings, his first houses, and his early education under Philip Johnson and Lucan. Niall Cronin is a photographer specializing in architecture, design, and construction. A native of Indiana, he's got a B.A. in Urban Studies from the College of Worcester.
Go Fighting Scots!
Another native of Indiana, Phil Cox, attended UNC Chapel Hill.
Go Tar Heels!
Studying art history and journalism. He's now a brand strategist and a writer in New York. After 5 years of research, their book, What a Building Does, will be published this September. Welcome, Phil and Niall.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. It's a great intro.
It's downhill from here.
So, two gentlemen from Indiana. How did the two of you meet each other? Was it in Indiana or somewhere else?
Yeah, we are actually lifelong friends. We met in kindergarten, probably. So
really?
we go way back. And yeah, we're born and raised in Indianapolis, and both of our families still live there as well.
Now, isn't College of Worcester, isn't that in Massachusetts?
Common mix-up. It's actually Ohio. Small town in Ohio. Right between Cleveland and Columbus, I believe. So
Okay.
Not too far from Indy.
As childhood friends, when did architecture hit you? Did it hit you at the same time or separately? How did that work?
Probably a little separately. We went to high school together, but went our separate ways in college. And my undergraduate degree is in urban studies, and thought I was going to go to architectural grad school to start practicing potentially at some point. But I actually fell into photography instead. And then, always had an interest in art and architecture and buildings and all sorts of things like that. So I started to focus the photography practice on architectural subjects. And that's kind of how I got there, long story short. But
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because usually people think Indiana, that's Columbus, right? And that's what people know about modern architecture. But honestly, Columbus was not on our radar growing up and not on most people's radar in Indianapolis. I think now it has a much bigger profile in the city. So it was really something we came to more as adults and rediscovering our hometown's pretty interesting and significant legacy of modern architecture. It's been a joy to kind of get back into some of the places we grew up around and kind of knew as kids, but didn't appreciate the history behind them. And hopefully with this book, bringing more people into a greater awareness of what Indianapolis has and why it matters to the history of modern architecture.
Your book is about Evans Woollen, who did architecture primarily in Indianapolis, but had some of his early successes in New Canaan, Connecticut, another epicenter of mid-century modernism. There's one house in particular I wanted to ask you about, just this phenomenal house that I didn't even know about until recently, till I connected with you guys, that is no longer with us, but was this multi-story, very futuristic, early mid-century modernist house in New Canaan. Tell us about that one.
Just to explain, Woollen went to Yale for his architecture degree, both undergrad and master's, and then moved immediately to New Canaan at kind of, as you mentioned, the epicenter or the apogee of that town's period in the forefront of modern architecture, and worked with Phillip Johnson, John Johansson, and did a couple of houses in the area, just moonlighting for himself for young clients. Probably you're referring to the Arlt House, which was one, and there's at least two others that we're aware of. And these are, pretty classic and pretty like purist distillations of that international style aesthetic, but done for a budget. So, while Philip Johnson and Johansson and Noyes and all those guys were working with bigger budgets for luxury clients, Woollen was 24 or something, living in a stable to make ends meet and working with young couples, really young families, and giving them that international style aesthetic on the cheap. But what he was able to produce is pretty spectacular. Unfortunately, most, if not all, of these houses are significantly altered. If you go to New Canaan today, you won't find the houses as he designed them there. But he was amongst that same group of, kind of modernist innovators, even in the 50s, part of New Canaan annual house tour. You could go see the glass house, and then the next stop would be one of Woollen's houses. So it's a really unsung story of him being at part of that epicenter, but it's a name that's sort of been lost to history, particularly on the East Coast.
Well, brutalism was sort of a cost-effective construction technique, too.
Yeah. I mean, those early houses were not brutalist. They were purely kind of steel, brick, and wood, masonry as well.
A lot of glass,
obviously, but it's the same. Obviously, like the rise of modernism coincided with the post-war building boom when cheap construction was a necessity, particularly for young families who are looking to kind of carve out their version of the American dream in the suburbs. So it was all very much of a piece. And he continued that same strategy in his brutalist work, which kind of more picked up in the early 1960s and into the 1970s.
If you want to see these houses that we're talking about, you can go to our archive, usmodernist.org/Woollen. That's spelled WOOLLEN. All right, now, how did the two of you decide to research Evans Woollen and go so deep into his life and career?
Well, it's a good question. Phil approached me years ago at this point, so the details are a little hazy, but maybe coming out of COVID, there was some interest in learning a little bit more about the architecture from back home. And
yeah, I mean, both of us were spending, as many people, a lot of time in our parents' or siblings' houses during COVID and spending time in our hometowns. And I don't know what originally started it, but realizing that a bunch of these really amazing, what I think are beautiful brutalist buildings in Indianapolis were all designed by the same person. And these are not kind of out of the way buildings. They are pretty significant visible structures that every local knows. They don't know Evans Woollen's name. They don't know the history behind these buildings, but these are buildings that everyone knows. They're on major thoroughfares, large public buildings.
Yeah. What buildings are these?
There's a couple that kind of first tipped us off. First would be Clues Memorial Hall, which is built on Butler University's campus. It's 1963 and is one of the main kind of theaters or theatrical venues in Indianapolis. That was done with John Johansson. Others were a major federal building downtown called the Minton K Park Federal Building. It's an office building. Another is now known as Barton Tower, and that's public housing project, also downtown. So those are just three that we noticed, but also lots of secondary, less significant structures. We turned out, I didn't know this, our elementary school was designed by Woollen.
Huh. Wow.
The main downtown central library where my sister actually got married was designed by Woollen. So these are all these kind of funny loose threads that we were able to pick together, and no one had really written about Woollen in any comprehensive or critical way before. And how could the same guy have done these like brutalist, often, very divisive buildings in the 60s and postmodern schoolhouses in the 80s and a very like almost neo-contemporary library edition in 2007. So our hope was to weave that thread across all these different styles and time periods, and also to say, like, what did this guy mean for a city, and how did he impact the city as it developed across the post-war period?
So what was Woollen's signature move or moves, if you will? I mean, what made him unique among the other architects?
Niall can speak to this too about the trouble with photographing these buildings because they're all so completely different. And that has been both the challenge and the opportunity of doing this book is like, how do you find a cohesive story for an architect who did not have one style, did not have one philosophy? He really was kind of this magpie picking up different aesthetics or methodologies and casting them aside based on, various different circumstances. I would say if you look at the long arc of his life, he definitely began as a very faithful mainstream modernist, again, in the vein of a Philip Johnson or a Mies van der Rohe, and always on the pulse of kind of what was going on in the national or international architectural discourse. So once brutalism became really in vogue in the 60s and 70s, he quickly changed his practice and was doing almost entirely brutalist concrete buildings. I would say Cluse, which I mentioned earlier, was one of the first truly brutalist buildings done in the United States, the same year as the Carpenter Center in Cambridge and Paul Rudolph's Art and Architecture building at Yale. 70s and 80s, as the field was turning towards postmodernism, he did the same. I would say, like, if there is one kind of unique part of his work is his embrace of contextual and participatory design in the 80s and the 90s, and that was something he really began to embrace, less because it was trendy or stylish, but more because he really believed in an architecture that felt very much a piece of both the aesthetic environment that it operated in, but also culturally and socially amongst, its actual users, which is sort of contradictory when you think about his early career in brutalism. And often people are surprised when they hear that he was really this empathetic humanist architect in his later years, but this is something he really believed in. And it's something we've tried to really bring out in the book as well. In Indianapolis, if people know him, it's somewhat of a negative reputation just because of these very brash, brutalist buildings. But actually, there's a lot of very interesting, ahead of its time thinking, part of his later work that we think is just as noteworthy as those brutalist buildings, too.
Is he an Indianapolis guy? Is that where he grew up?
Yeah.
He is, yeah. I think his family had been there for a long time, maybe is related, I believe, to some of the founding fathers of the state, the city.
Yeah. I mean, his family had been there since the 1800s, the pioneer era, and his grandfather and father were very prominent local citizens. So that was, another part of the book that no one knows about, that we really tried to surface that history of what his legacy meant, both for the city, but also as someone trying to live up to the family mantle. And how did he do that? He did that not through business or philanthropy like his ancestors, but through architecture in sort of a different way. So his story is very, very locally rooted, which is something we think is really important to understanding his career today.
In 1976, he completed the Minton Capehart Federal Building in Indianapolis. By the time this episode airs, it could possibly be in the crosshairs of the Trump administration for demolition, as are so many modernist federal buildings around the country.
That's right. And I think in the last couple of months, we've seen it on a list being, up for sale at some point. Maybe that's happening now. I don't know if that's what the status exactly is at this moment, but it's definitely a threat to a lot of buildings like that. I think that building is very special in his catalog of things because of the mural that kind of wraps around the base of it. That was the other thing I was going to touch on about his style. He didn't shy away from color, and that building includes an incredibly large Milton Glaser mural at the base. So not only would that be a threat to the building, but also to the public art sort of in the city, sort of a compounding problem to address.
Does Indianapolis have a preservation organization that keeps watch on buildings like this of the modern era, or are they all still obsessed with Victorians?
So, I mean, as you probably know, Indiana has an amazing preservation organization called Indiana Landmarks and does a lot of work both in Indianapolis and across the state. As you also alluded to, though, they have their hands full with a lot of different preservation tasks of architecture of all types. So, we hope that there will be lots of supporters coming out to save these buildings. But I will say, like, as champions for Woollen's work, his work has not fared kindly, let's say, over the past decades or so. I think just because of the lack of awareness for him and his work and the ideas behind his work, but also just the general less than positive reception of brutalism, and those most visible buildings all are brutalist. So we've seen some of these buildings pretty significantly altered and changed. A vast majority of them are not protected or on the National Register. So it's our hope that there's just a little bit more of a groundswell of support for these buildings. And Indiana Landmarks, again, does amazing work and has done significant work for modern buildings. But, time will tell how this pans out, particularly for the federal building in downtown Indianapolis.
Well, you guys have got to get it on their radar.
We do. We absolutely do.
Did you get to talk with any of Woollen's family? Are they still around?
Yeah, we spoke to about 40 or 50 people for this book, which was a real pleasure, and people who, coming out of the woodwork in terms of worked for Woollen, back in the day. I think the oldest person we spoke to was a significant member of his team in the 1960s, up into, journalists, clients, colleagues, friends from the 1980s, 1990s, and the 2000s. It was really great to start to give voice to a lot of the, let's say, hard history that you might see in the architectural magazines or the blueprints in the archives, to kind of, give more color to what we couldn't find in those archives. He has 2 sons who are still around. We weren't able to speak to them for the book, but again, it's our hope that we continue to kind of shine a light on his legacy and also inspire other folks to take up this mantle. And there's so much more to be written, both about Woollen and, Indianapolis' larger post-war development, in the same way that other cities like Chicago, St. Louis, and Columbus have gotten that treatment. So, yeah, there's definitely more to be done in this area. And we're very conscious. We're kind of just writing the first kind of stroke of that history, and hope other people can follow in our footsteps as well.
The book is What a Building Does, about Evans Woollen. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Tom.
it.
Houston, this is Commander Smart, Radio 1. We are ready for launch. Is the NPR module ready for final gravitas fueling?
Roger that, Radio 1. You are clear for final sequence.
Okay, Houston, load the gravitas.
Radio 1, we confirm 1.5 tons of pure NPR gravitas loaded.
Houston, we have a problem. There's a leak on the gravitas in damper 3. Can you adjust?
Radio 1, stand by.
Hey, Houston, does Elon Musk have any Scott Pelley over at SpaceX we can load?
Radio 1, we don't have the budget for Scott Pelley.
Carl Castle?
Nope.
Susan Stamberg?
All out.
Bill O'Reilly?
Sorry, Radio 1, he blew up on the pad a few years ago. Wait a second. I've got just the voice. Loading now.
10-4, Houston. Gravitas loading complete. I sound like a video game character. Finish him! No, seriously. Thanks for the Ari Shapiro.
Ari Shapiro graduated from Yale.
Go Bulldogs!
And he launched a journalism career interning for NPR's legendary legal affairs correspondent Nina Totenberg.
Go Due Process!
He's best known as an anchor of NPR's venerable All Things Considered, one of the most listened to, loved, and hated radio news shows in the country, depending on your politics, of course. Ari is also host of the podcast Consider This. His memoir, The Best Strangers in the World, Stories from a Life Spent Listening, was the New York Times bestseller, and he's won 3 national Edward R. Murrow Awards, which is a BFD in the world of journalism. Ari won the Daniel Shore Journalism Prize for investigative reporting on meth use and HIV transmission. And if you don't know who Daniel Shore was, look him up. There is some serious gravitas. Off the air, Shapiro is a celebrated vocalist and frequent guest singer with Pink Martini, appearing with him since 2008. He's graced stages from the Hollywood Bowl to Carnegie Hall, and his solo show, Thank You for Listening, tours the country, including stories from journalism, lessons from his grandmother, the fortune teller, and he even reads some hate mail. Welcome to the show, Ari.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Ari, I have to ask, any, let's see, stresses around NPR lately?
I don't know what you could possibly be referring to. I'll tell you one nice thing about where I sit. I've spent my entire career at NPR, but as a host of All Things Considered, we have a 2-hour program each day. And no matter how much news is happening in the world, it's still a 2-hour program. So I spent 4 years as a White House correspondent, and there were times that my phone was just going nonstop, and I never got a night's sleep, and I was always working weekends. And as a host of All Things Considered, my show is on at a certain time every day, and whatever happens outside of those hours, I can say with gratitude is someone else's problem.
You can leave it at the office.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, in my entire career, hosting All Things Considered is the only time I've been able to turn my phone off when I go to sleep.
Isn't that great, though? I mean,
it's a luxury
to have that kind of peace. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do love that you are a regular New York Times crossword clue answer.
Well, I have to thank my parents for giving me an unusual 3-letter name with 2 vowels and a common consonant. Yeah. It happens that A-R-I is a very common letter combination in crossword puzzles, and there just are not that many Aris in the world.
Right. There's Yoko Ono. She shows up a lot.
Yeah.
And the famous 70s rock band ELO. That's
absolutely. Brian Eno is in there.
Yeah, Brian Eno is in there. Yep. And NPR host Shapiro.
Although they've been mixing it up. Recently, one of them said the Mole host, Shapiro.
Yeah.
Because I also hosted a reality competition on Netflix called The Mole. So the nice thing about wearing so many hats is they could say Pink Martini singer Shapiro, solo cabaret artist Shapiro, author of The Best Strangers in the World. It's nice. They can mix up the clues a little bit.
So how did you get hooked up with Pink Martini?
Well, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, which is the city that the band is based in. And so I became friends with them over the years. And when I moved to Washington, D.C., I would always host them when they came through on tour. I would have a brunch or a cookout or drinks or what have you. And there was one time they had a night off in D.C. It was a Monday night, and I threw this big backyard barbecue for them. And the barbecue evolved into a sing-along around my piano. Pink Martini's bandleader, Thomas Lauderdale, is the pianist. And after this late-night sing-along, the next day, Thomas called me at my office, and he said, "Hey, Ari, I forgot that you can really sing. We're writing a song for the next album that we want a man to sing." Of course, Pink Martini's lead singer is a woman. He said, "Why don't you come to Portland and record it for us?" And for me, this was like a dream come true. I'd been a fan of the band ever since high school. But I never thought it would actually happen until a few months later. I was in Portland recording this song that they had just written called But Now I'm Back, which was sort of an answer song to one they had written for China called And Then You're Gone.
Yeah.
Both songs, And Then You're Gone, But Now I'm Back, were based on the same Schubert melody, but And Then You're Gone had kind of a Latin rhythm, and But Now I'm Back had a big band swing rhythm. So I recorded this song with them thinking, well, that's going to be the one and only time I ever did this thing with this band that I've always idolized. And then Thomas turned to me and he said, "Well, now we need to find a time for you to perform the song live with us. So why don't you come to the Hollywood Bowl?" Now, keep in mind, I had never performed live with any band anywhere, ever. And so my first time singing on stage with a band
is at the Hollywood Bowl.
Was in front of nearly 18,000 people at the Hollywood Bowl.
Holy crap.
Yeah, you and the Beatles.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing that's so terrifying, is that when you're backstage at the Bowl, they have these huge framed black and white photographs of all the legends who've been on that stage over the years. So as you're waiting to go on, you're pacing the hallways, walking past these photos of the Beatles and Aretha Franklin and Judy Garland and Jimi Hendrix, all standing where you are just about to stand, doing what you're about to do far better than you could ever dream of possibly doing it.
Well, let's hear it. But Now I'm Back was written by Alex Marashian, and it's from Pink Martini's Splendor in the Grass album. Here they are with But Now I'm Back.
to see you. Won't you please, please open the door? I brought you flowers, been waiting hours, can't stand it anymore. So here's what happened when you were napping. I just went out for a snack. I was feeling famished and then I vanished. But now I'm back. Now he's back. Had a snack. Now he's back. My heart is burning for that love of ours, yearning for that sea of stars. Let me in so I can prove to you that no one else can love you, girl, the way that I do. Oh, how I miss you. I want to kiss you and hold you close from dusk until dawn. So let's just make up, and when you wake up, I promise not to be gone. You know I love you, dream only of you, so please, please cut me some slack. I went away just a couple of days, but now I'm back. Now he's back. Cut him slack. Now he's back. You back! Baby, I guess that maybe you're still a little angry with me, but it's getting late and my boys are waiting. Gotta get something to eat. Better go now, hope you know now I love you, that is a fact. Gotta hurry, but don't you worry, baby, 'cause I'll be back. He'll be back. It's a fact. Trust me, baby. He'll be back. This time I mean. Look, the guys are waiting in the car. I gotta go. He'll be back. Hey, you don't have any cash, do you? Don't attack. You know, just a 20 or something? It's a fact. Look, if you don't want to see me, you can slip it under the door. He'll be back. It's a fact. Can I get you anything? He'll be back. I'll be back. It's a fact. You'll see. He'll be back. It's a fact. He'll be back.
Speaking of asking for cash and coming back, I expect you get hit on all the time by NPR affiliate stations to come do their fundraisers.
I am more than happy to make the case for public radio, but fortunately, I do not get called on to do the fundraisers. I do sometimes do pre-recorded statements that stations air.
Okay.
But given the hundreds of stations that are out in the country and the number of hours they spend fundraising, if I were to do that, I wouldn't have any time to report the news.
You know, our station, WUNC in Chapel Hill, used to get Carl Castle all the time to come down because Carl's dad lived in North Carolina, so he'd go visit his father, who was quite elderly at the time, and stop in at the station. I remember chatting with him a couple times during the 90s. He was great.
Carl was the morning newscaster, and early in my career, when I worked the overnight shift on Morning Edition, I would get to work at 1 a.m. and he would roll in a couple hours later, and he was always the friendliest sort of grandfatherly type with this gravitas of the newscaster. Yeah, he was one of a kind. Plus, he had this funny side that came out when he was the scorekeeper for Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Oh, yeah. Right. That was where I really got to know him, was on that show. He
would give away, they had prizes where Carl Castle would do your outgoing voicemail.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, in your show, you relate stories from your grandmother, who was a fortune teller, and you include some of the lessons and advice that she gave you. What was some of that advice?
So just for context, I sing with Pink Martini, this well-established band, but separately recently I wrote a solo cabaret show that I perform with my musical director, Henry Kapersky, on the piano. It's something that I'm going to be touring this July through Nashville, Atlanta, Chicago, St. Louis, and then Pittsburgh in August at the city wineries in those cities. And as I was developing it, the through line sort of became the story of my fortune teller grandmother, who wore a blonde wig and false eyelashes. And she used to work at a carnival outside of Chicago called Riverview. She would tell family members fortunes, but she would only ever share the good stuff. If there was anything dark or scary or ominous, that was her secret to keep. And I eventually sort of figured out why. And it was a lesson that I learned kind of the hard way. but she was a force of nature in her life and remains a powerful force even in death, I think, now that she's become kind of the centerpiece of this show.
Well, I hope you'll come to our neighborhood and perform, Ari. We have a great jazz club here called Sharp 9.
Oh, fun.
Dave runs it. You can Google him.
Cool.
And if you're sort of traveling between Washington and Atlanta on tour, you could stop in and do a night here, and I will host a barbecue for you at my house.
It comes full circle.
Yes, it does.
It's been so fun doing this, though, because I have done solo cabaret shows before, but they were always just sort of like in Washington, D.C., or I briefly did one at 54 Below in New York. And those now feel kind of like warm-ups for this thing that I have been touring and evolving and really have fallen in love with. And it's so great to be able to go to these different cities where I might not know anybody and where audience members show up and go on this journey with me. And at the end, it really feels like we've gone somewhere together. And so I always look forward to the opportunity to do it, even though it is such a different world from my journalism hat that I wear as host of All Things Considered, or even different from touring with Pink Martini, which is such a large band and such a well-oiled machine that being able to do this sort of just like me and Henry on the road kind of thing is very different and really fun.
Hey, we've got another song to play from Pink Martini's 2016 album, Je dis oui, originally written as La Soledad by bandleader Thomas Lauderdale and singer Pepe Luke. Am I saying that right?
I just always knew him as Pepe, so...
Oh, just, okay, as singer Pepe to his friends. And it's heard on the band's debut album, Sympathique. In 2016, Iyad Qasim created new lyrics exploring the nostalgic sentiment of homesickness from an immigrant's perspective. Here's Ari with Finissima D.
في هواك عالبال ما تنسانيش هنعيني لك في سؤال برضو انت فين وحشني مدهران في سنين صبرت الحب راح وعمري راح ويا في الوحدة دي المعوزة وجرا لا صورتك لا ذكريات في لوحك برضو انت فيه وحشني مدهران في نسمة دي كل كتير من قلبي بالألحان. فورائي عن روحي طار والغربة دي السباحة لا دم حال أنت فين وحشني لما خلاص بنتأمل من غير سؤال ده قلبي طار يا سلام في الدنيا نور طرب وشغف وغرام لا صورتك دي راحة بالي زمان بردون تفين وحشني مطهرة في نسمة دي في تف هواك وغنوة عمري معاك.
One of the things I love about Pink Martini is they make singing in languages other than English so accessible to their audiences, and that was a great example.
There's something really fun that we've been doing for the 30th anniversary of the band, and it's hard to believe that the band has been around for 30 years, but we've been doing all of these 30th anniversary shows where we promise we're going to do 30 languages over the course of the night, and when it gets close to the end and we're nowhere near 30, we do this medley that is, I don't know, a dozen or so songs in different languages. And it's just like 8 or 16 bars of each one. And It is so much fun. And the audience has a great time, even though obviously the audience doesn't all speak Armenian and Turkish and Japanese and Hindi and all of the other languages that are in this medley. But I think Pink Martini has always been this kind of global party that everybody is invited to. And especially in a moment when people feel suspicious of difference and people retreat to their own corners of like-minded ideas, it's really refreshing to be in a room with thousands of people who are all dancing and clapping and singing along to a lot of languages that they might not be familiar with at all.
It's like a UN dance party.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thomas, the band leader, sometimes says, if the United Nations had a house band in 1962, it would be Pink Martini.
Thomas has a great ear for melody, and he will be a guest on the show with us in 6 weeks.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Ah, fabulous. Give him my best.
Ari, thanks so much for joining us. Such a pleasure.
It has been an absolute joy, and I hope to see you in one of these cities for my upcoming Thank You for Listening tour: Nashville, Atlanta, Chicago, St. Louis, and Pittsburgh. Looking forward to it.
And remember, please contribute to public radio because Lord knows they need it. In North Carolina, you can call 1-800-962-9862, or anywhere in the country, just go to npr.org.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Palm Springs, and Malibu. Okay, Tom?
Visit USModernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 25,000 significant modernist houses, and access 5 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. US Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl, with guest research by Bobby Morris. Cooperative is her middle name, or it could be Cordelia. We really don't know. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I'll be back next week with another legendary Black Gamma edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.